4 seems to be the magic number in the Championship's automatic promotion race. Last season, you had the 3 Premier League relegated clubs and promoted Ipswich all jostling for that top 2. And this season, it's a similar story because while Burnley, Sheffield United and Leeds have all been outstanding this season after Leeds, of course, reached the playoffs last season and just missed out, while Burnley and Sheffield United are looking strong to bounce back after relegation from the Premier League last season. Sunderland are the ones that have shot up from mid-table and just 3 points separate first from fourth in what looks surely to be a 4-horse race going into the second half of the season, which we're in now. But what I think is also really intriguing about this automatic promotion race is that while each of these teams have had to show outstanding qualities in order to get themselves into the picture, each of them have a weakness. Each of them have a reason to doubt. Leeds, for instance, create a ton of chances. They've got question marks in the goalkeeping department. Burnley, this clean sheet machine, don't create as many as they'd like. Sheffield United, have they got enough depth? And Sunderland, have they got the experience, the wily nous to get themselves over the line? Plenty to dive into then on this Championship podcast. Yes, welcome along to this EFL debate. Get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify because that would help us out a lot. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by my lovely co-host, Oli Mann of the Sheffield United way. What's chocolate? What are you chuckling?
For a minute, Gab, I thought you were introducing me as your love. I'm like, and my love, true love, one man for me. Oliver Mann will be joining me today.
Yes, not quite there. But what was I going to say? Yes, Ollie. Do you think that it's been a really interesting first half of the season in the Championship from all sorts of areas, because you've got the relegation battle where any of 10 teams could go down. You've got 1 or 2 spaces that look up for grabs in terms of the playoff scramble where lots of teams could be in the mix. And again, the automatic promotion race looks like it's going to go right to the wire with these 4 teams.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's one of those where it feels like there's nobody in the division who's probably sat there saying we've got nothing to play for. Maybe you look at QPR and Swansea. Maybe they're the 2 teams that you look at and think, yeah, they'll have probably a relatively quiet second half of the season, but also that's huge progress for QPR. You've got to think about them and think, yeah, they'll be delighted to have a quiet, uneventful second half of the season. So I think it is a really exciting sort of setup that we've got at the moment. I think we could end up in a fantastic position. It's 20 games left, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think we're in for a really exciting run now because it's so tight in all of those key areas.
Do you think we're going to get to the penultimate game, for instance, with all 4 teams in the mix? Or do you think we're going to have a situation where either one team pulls away and pulls clear of the chasing pack, or one of them maybe drops in and maybe becomes a nailed on for a playoff spot? How do you see it panning out?
I think it's so difficult. I think 4 teams maintaining that pace is really, really tough. I think it's difficult to expect that all 4 will still be there on the second to last game of the season, the penultimate game. I think Leeds will be promoted. I think they'll have already sewn it up by then. I actually think Leeds will win the league. Oh, go on, be brave. I think Leeds will win the league by double points. I think they'll be more than 10 points clear come the end of the season. I think they will sort out their issues with the goalkeeper and then they will just fly. So I think Leeds will be well out of it by the time that day comes along. It's hard to separate United, Sunderland and Burnley at the minute. United have got to get some work done. We've got to get some recruitment done in January to keep us in the loop. Burnley look to be making some fantastic signings. There's noise every day, it seems, at the minute that Burnley are potentially looking at another player. I know there's talk about them being in for Morgan Whittaker at the moment to add a bit more of that attacking creativity that we're saying they're missing. So they're recruiting from a really strong position. I like the business Sunderland have done. Maybe that's a suggestion that they're going to deviate from the model now that they think there's a really serious chance they're going to be playing in the Premier League next season. So I think there's every chance that 3 teams are still in that conversation with everything to play for with 2 games left. But I think Leeds will have sewn up top spot before then.
Well, you mentioning Sunderland towards the end sets it up
Mm.
beautifully from a first guest, which is Jonny from Roker Report. Good evening, Jonny. Thanks so much for joining us. That Enzo Lafay signing, I've never seen him play, so I'm going to put my cards on the table there. But the hipster people that I have spoken to that study these European leagues speak extremely highly. I think somebody on Roker Report, forgive me, I've forgotten the writer's name, said that it was comparable to Wolves signing Ruben Neves, whether it's quite that extreme, with Neves having been a Champions League quarterfinalist with Porto the year before winning the championship title with Wolves. But clearly it feels like Sunderland feel like they want to make serious moves in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Oli was spot on with what he was saying just before about the fact that, you look at the model, it's generally been, really young, inexperienced players with an eye on the future, if not both eyes on the future. Whereas it seems like they've changed tack, and now this window from what we've seen from the signing of Lafay, as well as what we're hearing about potential further incomings, it seems like it's handbrake off, full steam ahead. Let's go for promotion, because I think there's a kind of general feeling, certainly within the fans I've talked to, if not, I imagine the league as a whole, that the top end of the league, the quality is not what it was last season. Last season was a bit of an outlier. You look at Leicester, you look at what Ipswich did. I think by this stage of the season, Leicester were on something like 65 points, maybe, which is, that's outrageous when you think of the four teams on between 50 and 53. Like, it's insane. Whereas this season, it's much more achievable. Unless one of these teams, or more than one of these teams, the four that are up there, go on a sort of 15, 16, 17 game winning run, we're not going to see points totals like that. So I think Lafay's reputation precedes him. I haven't watched him play much myself. I've seen clips, I've seen bits and pieces. But you just look at the stats. I mean, I think 2 seasons ago, he created the third most chances in open play in the whole of the French league, only behind Messi and Neymar, which,
We'll give him that.
Yeah, you're rattling off stats like that for a player in the Championship. You think, yeah, maybe he's got something actually. But yeah, long story short, I think it signals a real change of direction from the hierarchy at Sunderland. I think it's a real signal of intent, but obviously looks great on paper. We've got to see him on grass next, and that'll be the acid test.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting seeing what Sunderland are doing, and I think actually, I feel like the project at Sunderland has been building for quite a while, but there was obviously this confidence that was shaken a little bit last season. Obviously, given the managerial decisions that were made, there were questions, there were comments being thrown around that maybe said the owners are too in love with this model. They've thrown away a great chance. They've thrown it away. Do you think this window seems to signal they've actually learned from those lessons? They've recognized that actually you can't just do the model, because, what I'm reading in our media, for example, is that you're going to outbid us for Brereton and Diaz. And obviously we're coming down, parachute payments, new owners. And yet you've got this momentum and sort of finance coming behind you now. Do you think this signals a change where actually they've learned their lessons from last year and are now really ready to be not just owners who take Sunderland forward, but who really drive Sunderland forward, the way that some of those clubs we referenced from last season, like Ipswich's owners, are trying to do for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I think it's partly learning from the mistakes, because there were definitely mistakes last season. You look at the managerial appointment, you can argue then the decision to give caretaker charge to Mike Dodds for months on end. That was obviously allayed by bringing in Reggie Celebriste over the summer, a permanent appointment. But that's one aspect. You look at some of the signings we made, you look at how we used the loan market last season, I thought was particularly poor. You look at Mason Burstow that we brought in as a loan signing up front, and I think he scored 1 goal all season. He's at Hull this season, he's only scored twice. I mean, you've got to see that as a failure, whereas top to bottom this season, it's felt like they've put things right. And so I think it's part of learning the lesson and partly just trying to take advantage of what's looking like a really good opportunity, because you mentioned the Brereton Diaz links as well, and from everything that I've seen, it looks like he's going to choose Sheffield United, and he's basically said it's Sheffield United or nobody. Like, we've been money for him, but he's just turned us down, and Blackburn as well. Whereas we've then apparently, again, this is all paper talk basically, but from what I've read, it seems that we've then turned our attentions to Tom Cannon, who, by all accounts, Leicester are about to recall and then look to I think again, I believe it will be a loan with an obligation to buy on promotion. But you've got to imagine that if that deal was to be agreed, and we wake up in a week's time and Tom Cannon's a Sunderland player, you'd have to think there's some good money being promised to Leicester in the event of promotion, and a serious outlay on wages at that point. And the fact that the names we're being linked with are Ben Brereton Diaz, Tom Cannon, like championship experienced, proven or relatively proven players at this level. That is a far cry from the likes of, Eliza Mayenda, Adil O'Sheesh, names like this who, whether they've got quality or whether they haven't, they're not experienced championship players. That's for sure.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one thing I was kind of wondering about, Jonny, is you mentioned Mayenda there, and in more recent games, league games, he's played up top alongside Wilson Isidore. So whereas up until the turn of the calendar year, you played a 4-3-3 in possession and a 4-4-2 out of possession. Since the turn of the year, it's been a 4-4-2 almost both in and out of possession. But I'm thinking with the midfield additions, does that point to a reverting to a 4-3-3? Because I even find it hard to pick three midfielders from the lot that you've got, let alone having to pick two.
Yeah, it's a bit of an embarrassment of riches, isn't it? Which it's sitting here as a Sunderland fan, I love it. It's great, but it'll certainly be a headache for Labrice over the coming months because, as you say, how do you pick three out of those? And if you slim that down to two, it's impossible. I think part of the reason that we swapped to the 4-4-2 was injuries / availability of players meant that Chris Rigg was out from Boxing Day until the other day against Stoke. Tommy Watson's out on the left wing. Romain Mundle's out on the left wing. Jan Poveda, who's barely played for us, but the right winger who was at Sheffield Wednesday last season, he's been injured. I saw that look, Oli. He's been injured for a while as well. So really limited availability of our preferred wingers, and then also a couple of injuries in midfield. All of a sudden, you look at the 4-4-2 and you think, actually, with what we've got, this might be the best we can do, because you almost get to bypass the midfield a bit, which obviously isn't what we'd look to do normally, because that's an area of strength. But you bypass the midfield, and then by putting Mayenda up front with Isidore as a pairing, then I think all of a sudden you start to bring things out of those two that you can't get in our sort of standard system. But, I think by the end of this month, it's likely that one or both of Romain Mundle and Watson will be back. So we'll be back to full strength out wide. And then, as we've said, you look at the midfield options and it becomes pretty clear, I think, that the way that you've got to go is to pick three and maybe shut your eyes and chuck darts at a board to pick which three for every game. But what it does show is that we have got that 4-4-2 as an option. When the game state, when the opposition makes sense, which is something that we've not really had as an option in our arsenal for a long time. Really, you'd have to go back a number of years before you find another example of Sunderland playing such a kind of back to basics formation. Which, hopefully that can be a weapon in the the promotion running. But it's 20 games away, so we'll wait and see.
I can certainly see how it would, because I thought that tactical setup that you used against United, I think that was maybe the second game you'd used sort of the 4-4-2 in terms of drifting with Isidore and Mayenda playing up front. And I thought the danger of how they linked up, of how you hit us in transition, of that sort of pace that you got in terms of coming at the United back line, probably caused us more problems than any team we've played all season. You saw the panic coming through in those centre halves. I thought Anel and Jack Robinson had probably their worst games of the season because they were just placed under so much pressure. And so thinking about that as almost a backup option, you think, we've got all this talent, all this quality. And if that doesn't work, we'll do the thing that made the second best defence in the league absolutely need new Wunderham. You know what I mean? It's not a bad backup, is it?
Yeah, exactly. If we hadn't tried it and tested it against Sheffield United, and if it hadn't worked in that game, I'd have loads of reservations. But once you've seen it, do the business against one of your direct rivals, I think you've got to just accept that is a viable option at that point. It's kind of been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Jonny, I wanted to turn our attention to Turf Moor on Friday night, and we're joined now by Burnley fan Natalie Bromley from No Nay Never. Good evening, Natalie. Thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Sorry I'm late.
No, that's fine. wanted to get your perspective on Friday night's game, Natalie. How are you feeling about it as a Burnley fan? It is a promotion 6-pointer.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings, to be honest. It's like we've been playing consistently well, and we've been grinding out the results that we need to. The excitement in the football is starting to come back slowly. Right. It's not quite as difficult as it has been to watch. There's been some exciting moments, but we continue to be much better away from home than we are at home. I think there's a nervousness to our play. I don't know if it's pressure. I don't know if it's just the expectations of home games, but we haven't performed very well at home at all. That said, it has been easier to perform better with sides that don't stick 11 men behind the ball, that play a bit better, which is exactly what I expect Sunderland will be. You know, teams that are proactive and they take the initiative and they come at you and they try and dictate the flow and the pace of the game. So we haven't seen that too much at Burnley. So I'm a terrible cop-out of an answer, but I genuinely don't know what to expect on Friday, I'm afraid. I don't know whether or not we'll play scared or whether or not it will really help us having a side that bring the game to us. But it's going to be a cracker. I'm really looking forward to it.
Jonny, from a Sunderland point of view, I imagine there's one part of you thinking if we could win at Turf Moor, that would give us a real springboard to go and attack the rest of the season and give these young players some real belief. And players like Dan Neil, the captain, and Joe Bellingham even, and Chris Rigg, and a bit of a coming of age possibly, Dave, even though you've certainly came of age this season. But on the other hand, there's also an argument to say that a point would be a decent result as well, given that you've got some more favourable fixtures coming up. So which side of that spectrum would you be closer towards, do you think?
Oh, I'd take a point right now.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. If you offered us a point, I'd take that and run. I think...
Me too.
Should we shake hands now, should we?
Deal.
No, like, it's a massive opportunity. And, you know, if you go away to your promotion rivals and you take 3 points, then that's massive. You know, it's why they call it a 6-pointer. You know what I mean? It'd be huge for us. It'd be a real dent for Burnley. It will be massive. But at the same time, I think out of the 4 teams that are up there, we're obviously the ones that weren't really expected to be there. We're not really sort of expected to be doing anything this season. So from that perspective, I think if we go and we take a point, I know you predicted us to win the league, Gab. Okay, I'll give you your flowers for that if and when it happens. All right. But yeah, like if we go there and we take a point, I think we stay in touch and distance. We haven't ceded any ground. And crucially, I think for us, second half of the season, our home fixtures are pretty favourable. You know,
and your home form's already pretty strong as well.
I mean, the only game that we've lost at home all season was the cup game against Stoke, where we put out mostly a second-string team. So we've really got to focus on the home games. Now, if we do our job there, then you can afford to take a point away from home against Burnley, against Leeds. We could even afford to go to Middlesbrough and take a point. You know, we don't have to win those games necessarily. But obviously, then what it does is heap a lot of pressure onto the home games, and you know we want to win them anyway. But all of a sudden, when you do start taking a draw here and taking a draw there, you have to beat everybody. You know, you can't let Plymouth turn up and put 10 men behind the ball and drop points. So, you know, I'd take a point right now, but I do think we've got it in us to go there and win. And if we could, then you know that would set us up massively for the remaining 19 games.
Oli, I wanted to kind of come to you from a, I was going to say a neutral perspective in the sense that you don't support either of those sides. There's
no neutral going on here.
As a Sheffield United fan, it's interesting hearing both those fans talk with a kind of trepidation about being so eager to take a point. Do you think that, you know, as a fan base at this stage of the season, you know, we can often feel like the fear of losing games can sometimes supersede the optimism of winning them?
Yeah, 100%. But I'd be exactly the same in both of your shoes. I'd be saying take a point and run. Don't worry about it. But I think it's that trepidation of the fear of losing and losing ground specifically to a rival. Really outweighs that, because I think about sort of obviously Burnley came to Bramall Lane, absolutely did a job on us and deservedly won that game of football, but then followed it up by drawing their next 2. And so immediately you start to look at that, and United haven't lost hardly any ground as a result of losing that game because Burnley couldn't back it up. And so I think that's what's really key about this game is winning on Friday isn't going to make a difference to who goes up ultimately. That isn't going to be the deciding factor. The deciding factor is what happens the game after that. Because it could be Sunderland go to Burnley, turn them over, and then lose at home, lose away at Derby midweek. And you go, well, and so I think as fans, we get really wrapped up in the fear of losing to your rivals and how that's obviously going to be the defining fixture of the season. But actually, more often than not, it's the next game that defines where the season's going to go. It's what happens in the game after that, because that's where you throw away any lead that you've built anyway. For me, what I want to see on Friday is a mass brawl, you know?
That's not where I was expecting that to go.
I'm thinking, you know...
Are you okay? Do we need to talk?
I've had a difficult week now.
It's Monday. What the heck?
It's Monday. Oh, get some perspective, man. But, you know, a few red cards here and there, players missing the next few games. I just think that'd work nice for everyone.
Oh goodness me! I'm not sure if it's going to get that heated. To be honest, I think it's going to be a good technical game, but I don't think it's going to turn into some. I don't think the two sides that are playing are those that are very famous for being a hot-headed and Hannibal.
It's not 1970s Leeds against Millwall, is
it? No, boring guys.
So, Natalie, I wanted to come to you about creativity with Burnley because whether or not you're an XG fanatic, I don't know, but
I would remove that before I remove VAR from football. I would just say this right now.
Okay, all right. I'll phrase it another way. So you're not creating very many chances. I could give you the numbers for it, but that's kind of the bottom line.
I've watched the games. You can count them on this, so we're all right.
Yeah. Is there part of you that's a little bit worried that if you stay well organised, but opposing teams sort of start to hit them from outside the box and get the odd goal, and you start conceding one in games rather than none, you maybe suffer a little bit from not creating a quite as high a volume?
Yeah, for sure. And that has, in fact, happened to us. A couple of the draws that we've had at home, the East Lancs derby at Turf Moor being a classic example, and a couple of other games where absolute worldies. And I would say probably in the early stage of the season, we've not seen that many of them in the run-up to Christmas, I've got to say. I think that's died down a little bit. But yeah, just defensively, we're way too strong. So I don't know to what extent. We've conceded 9 goals all season, which is bananas. It just really, really is. I think the lack of creativity has been a problem from a fan perspective. It clearly hasn't been a problem from a league position. We sit second in the league, albeit only on goal difference, ironically, at the moment. So it's not, if you're Scott Parker and you sit here and you say, you can talk to me all you want about creating flair, exciting, entertaining football. What I could have been doing that, and we could have been losing games 2-1 or like conceding goals, and we could have been just in the playoffs right now. So we've been asked in the first half of the season to bypass entertainment for results. And it's frustrating from a fan perspective, because my view has always been, when you are a side like Burnley, you've got the resources behind you, you've spent the best part of the decade in the Premier League. When you drop down a division, you shouldn't need to have to sacrifice one or the other. You should be able to do both in what I would perceive to be a relatively weak championship this season. Sure. So that's frustrating. But it's just fan talk. It's just an entertainment perspective. What we don't know is what's going to happen in the second half of the season. I don't expect Ashley Barnes to make an impact on the pitch. I think that's very much a fan appointment with one eye on a coaching role for him. We are starting to look at other strikers, and Scott Parker's been quite clear that he's looking to bring some more of attacking threat in there. So maybe Scott Parker's just had to be very defensive in the first half of the season, because that's all he had at his disposal. We don't have an awful lot of attacking threat. With the right players, Fleming's starting to come into some form now. If we could ever get Lyle Foster at number 9 and Fleming as a number 10 on the same pitch for more than 3 minutes, that would be great. Yeah. Who knows? We may have both. So maybe ask me that question again mid-February, end of February, once the transfer window's closed and we see what we've got. Parker might surprise you. Listen, we know Parker Ball isn't famous for getting loads of goals, but I'm coming round to the fact that it's effective football in this league, and whether we like it or not, if we were sat in sixth position now, I'd be fuming. But we're not. It's working, and sure, it's not easy to watch, but it may very well get us in second place. Or I guess my only criticism with that would be, at the moment, we are in a pack of four. It's a very tight promotion race. And picking up on the point Oli made, if we hadn't have messed up on the games at home, your QPRs, your Derbys, your Prestons, your Blackburn, where we just could not break down just poor defensive sides, if we had more goal threat in us, we would be top of the league right now and people would be chasing us. So,
well, Natalie, I think that's a great point, but I feel what I would put to you, and I do take your point on board about the efficiency of Parker Ball, and the number of clean sheets has been insane. But it does seem to be like the equilibrium is skewed massively towards this defensive strength, as opposed to, I would say, all three of your immediate promotion rivals have a great defensive record, but they also have a means to create chances at a reasonable, if not brilliant rate. Like Leeds can create chances brilliantly. I think Sunderland have the equilibrium really pretty quite close to the close to the middle. And where
they also didn't lose 17 players 24 hours before the transfer window shut and their entire squad went.
True.
They also have strike. They also didn't have their number 9 and then number 10 who was supposed to play all season injured for the most half of the season. So I guess my point with that is that we don't know. We don't know whether or not this has just been Parker Ball's had to go to the extreme, because you look at the Burnley squad and you go, well, Koleosho's having a really disappointing season compared to what potential we saw in him last year. Jadon Anthony's starting to come right. Foster's been away for most of the season. Fleming's taken a while to get going. There's nobody else in our squad creating anything.
Do you not think, though, if Koleosho was playing in the same team that Benson and Zaroury were, his output would be pretty similar?
I think Koleosho is underperforming to the rate that Benson and Zaroury played in the team of 2 years ago. Their standard was better. I think it's probably a combination of both. Benson and Zaroury, their creativity was aided by assistance from the rest of the team. Jordan Bayer used to just do those driving runs from central defence and bypass half the midfield, and suddenly it was on the wing and they could just run in there. You know, we all saw the Benson step in and the left footer on into the net. So I guess, yes, you're right. From Koleosho's perspective, he's having to do more himself. He's not getting the assistance there. But Benson and Zaroury did pick it up a lot better than Koleosho has. So it's probably a combination of both, I think.
That's fair. So, Jonny, just sort of reflecting on that then, how are you feeling about Sunderland's chance at Turf Moor? Are you more apprehensive? Are you a little bit more encouraged? How are you feeling?
At the risk of having to pick splinters out my backside, it's tough one to call. It's because the thing is, right, you look at Burnley, and obviously you've just been discussing the kind of lack of creativity and reasons behind that, but you can't get away from that defensive record. I mean, I think, is it 4 goals at home you've conceded all season? Something like
9
that?
Overall, yeah.
9 overall,
yeah,
I think
9 overall, but there's only 4 of them at home. I'm just trying to think. I can't think of many.
Well, that's the thing. You can probably sit there and think of all the goals you've conceded at home.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't do that for Sunderland. But, and that record, that tells a massive story. Obviously, they're going to be tough to break down. They're going to be able to set a stall out and kind of say, like, look, try and get past us if you want. You probably won't. If we get past you, you're finished. So it's going to be...
Yeah, that's fair.
If you
first goal might win it, Jonny, to be honest.
I'd be shocked if the team who scores first doesn't win the game.
I think there'll be either no goals in it or 1 goal.
Yeah, and I think it's going to give Lebris a massive headache for us in terms of picking the team. Obviously, we were joking about how many midfielders we've got before, but in terms of how we set up, do you go with a low block and try and entice Burnley out, which they might not go for? Do you go with more of a mid block and then, try and play it a bit more balanced? Do you try and press at them a lot and go high and then force the space. I mean, I think you can make arguments for any of them.
Do you know what, Jonny? Do you know what I think Régis Lebris has got spot on this season is that balanced where you can press well at times, you can drop in for spells and be compact, you can look after the ball for spells. I would use that balance at Turf Moor. I understand the argument for sitting in for a point and getting a 0-0, but I also think you've got to, if you want to finish in the top two, it's not just about not losing ground on Burnley, because you've also got Leeds and Sheffield United to try and.
Oh yeah, I mean, he'll be trying to win the game. Make no mistake about that. But it's more that my fear is, however we set up for that first 15, 20 minutes, generally in a big away game, you'll set up a certain way, and then it's like, okay, if we can ease into the game,
you feel your way in.
Yeah, I worry that if we get that first 15 minutes wrong, we could play ourselves out of it too early, because. If we let Burnley start building up a head of steam in any way, then I think they're just so good defensively that we'll struggle to get back into it.
That's
Whereas,
fair, I agree with that.
If we get it right early doors and we start seeing cracks in the defence and we can make a few inroads, then I think we'll have a proper game on our hands. It's just that whatever team he picks, he's got to get that opening period of the game spot on.
Right, predictions for Friday night then. Starting with you, Oli.
Ooh, that's nasty. 1-0 Burnley. I think that. Sorry, Jonny. I think it's one of those where obviously I've seen both teams now because both have been to Bramall Lane. Obviously, we've been away to Sunderland as well. I think if Sunderland, in terms of talking tactics, now we think the game could play out, or what Sunderland need to look at in terms of coming to their system, I would go to Turf Moor exactly the same way you came to Bramall Lane, because for 45 minutes you played us off the park, and there was no question in my mind about who the better team were or who was going to win that game. You caused us problems coming down the wings. You managed to get in behind the defence that nobody else had done to that point. It really felt as though Sunderland had all of the right ingredients to cause problems to that team. Now, Burnley came to Bramall Lane and I would say out United us. They were like us, but they were like us on crack. Like, it was like we were just at the next level in terms of how they controlled the game, how they saw it out, how they kept us at arm's length. And so I think you hurt them the same way you hurt us, but I do think it will be harder to get through that. And ultimately, I think it'll probably play out similarly where Sunderland, I think, will come away kicking themselves, but will lose the game again.
Jonny?
Well, I hope Ollie's wrong. Going with me heart, I'd say 1-0 to Sunderland. Going with me head. Do you know what? I think going with me head, I'd say 0-0.
0-0.
Because I think we've got it in us to cancel Burnley out, but I think Burnley have got it in them to cancel the whole league out. So I think, like I say, with me heart, I want us to win. I think we've got it in us, but I think, being a bit more objective about it. Also, we talk about our midfield strength. Chris Rigg has only just come back from his injury, and Enzo Lefebvre has only just got in the door. So, is that going to be firing on all cylinders just yet? Possibly not. And
when's Mundle back, Jonny? Just quickly, do you
know? Him and Tommy Watson are both like a few weeks away. It's either the very end of January or the start of February. So, without those keys to try and unlock the Burnley defence, I think it's going to be a very, very
that's not
game.
Ideal, because Adil Oceche, who Régis Lebris kind of outed at Lorient, it wasn't like he was keen on him at the time. And he's a midfielder, so whether he looked okay, didn't he, last couple of games? But
square pegs in round holes is never ideal.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's not ideal, is it? You'd want to have a Mundle or a Watson there. Natalie, what's your score prediction?
Exactly the same, but the reverse. My heart's telling me that we'll nick it 1-0. Head saying this probably feels like a 0-0 all over it. I think the only way it's a score draw is if Burnley score first. I think if we go behind one, I think it's going to be much harder for us to equalise than if we go ahead and Sunderland equalise. So I think
it's funny though, because I think Sunderland would probably feel the same, the reverse.
Possibly, possibly. But I think I just know that we're not aggressive enough yet in our pursuit of goals. We're just Parker Ball is stabilizers. It's the handbrake. It's everything's just in first gear, and there's something about him. He's not brave in his way he plays football. He's very scared's probably doing him an injustice because he knows exactly what he's doing, but he's very conservative and very reserved in what he's playing. So I don't expect that to change. I don't expect, no matter what Sunderland do, to go out and start banging 2 or 3 goals in. I think we'll look for that one goal and then lock it up, and will be very difficult to break down unless, you know, there's a long shot that goes in from 25 yards out. So yeah, same prediction for me, but flip it.
I'm going to go 1-0 Sunderland. There you have it.
This could not have been more like equal. Yeah. We've had both fans have predicted their own win, and you two have gone for one each. It's like,
is it more? It's not
this
more.
This is talkable on a podcast.
Okay, brilliant.
That's how we love to describe ourselves, Natalie. When there's nothing flash, the fans don't like it, but we're here every week.
It's consistent and it delivers results. Excellent. That should be a tagline. I'm going to start describing that for you.
Jonny, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us, and best luck to both of you on Friday. May the best team win.
See you, everyone.
Guys.
Delighted to be joined now by Scott Worrell, who's a Leeds United fan. You can get subscribed to Scott on YouTube. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. How are you feeling as a Leeds United fan? I suppose both hearing from Natalie and Jonny about those two sort of promotion rivals.
Yeah, well, listening to them, I mean, there was talk of a draw. I think a draw would be absolutely fantastic. I'm sure Oli agrees with me on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we were in a fantastic place, I think, after the Derby game, and then we've had 2 draws back to back now. And I look at it, and I think we're just back in the pack again. I think we had a chance really to sort of push ahead, which I think, to be fair, I mean, Oli might have a better insight to this. Rival fans, I think that might happen with Leeds at some point. But it just hasn't happened yet, and fair play to the other teams, they've sort of kept us within bay, sort of thing. But yeah, after the Derby game, I was quite confident, and then obviously the Blackburn game, especially when we went 1-0 up, I was thinking the world's at our feet, sort of thing. And then Danny Bath puts us straight down to reality, really. And then obviously it was a poor performance, I thought, in the game after, and then I think you get with Leeds United then find themselves stuck again, and back to sort of square one, really. And yeah, I'm annoyed again. Really annoyed, with the whole game, with the Blackburn game. And yeah, it's a frustrating. I was saying this to my dad the other day. I think we're doing better. I think we're doing worse than we actually are, and I feel like we're letting ourselves down at times in that sense.
Yeah, well, do you know, I was wondering about that because Oli mentioned earlier, to pick up a thread there, that his view is that once Leeds United address the goalkeeping situation, you're going to pull clear, which does have some logical sense to it, because even if you look at this extremely simplistically, which is the only way I can manage, even if you look at it that way, you take away the errors that Ilyan Meslier has made, let's say 3 of them, that's probably an extra 6 points in terms of an extra 2 at Sunderland, I think an extra 2 at Hull, and what other game I've got in my head that
Preston, they were Preston away as well.
Preston, yeah, exactly. So that's an extra 6 points
as well, start of the year, he threw
that you would do wonders with. So do you think it's do you think it's as simple as address the goalkeeping issue and Leeds will fly up, or do you think, you know, maybe as a fan base it's harder to really get behind your own team because you're maybe a bit more apprehensive because of the past?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something in that, and I think Leeds United have got the worst playoff record in the history. Like, I even saw a stat the other day, the last team that was top at Christmas didn't get promoted with Leeds United. Like, we chalk up a few of these sort of records. I think every club thinks they do it, but I mean, we've got a song about us falling apart, so I think there's definitely justification in that. So I think, yeah, naturally I'm a bit sort of pessimistic because of that. But I do agree with Oli. I hadn't uploaded for a while, to be fair. But when I was uploading, I was the sort of king of the Darlow fan club, as I said. I've been bashing that since the sort of Sunderland game now. I want him gone in the summer melee. I want him gone in January. I think he's one of the reasons we got relegated in the first place, among many other reasons. But he was definitely part of it. I think the fact that he was talking about going to Chelsea the summer we got relegated was an absolute joke. I don't know who he thinks he is, but so I don't really like the character of him. So yeah, I think he has got to go. And as I said, if we had Cooper in that, or a Trafford or someone else, I mean, I still think we've conceded the second lowest XG or the lowest XG maybe in the whole league. I think it was definitely the lowest for the longest time.
Well, it's certainly the lowest at home, you know, where opposing teams just can't get a shot at Ellen Road.
But every shot goes in. I mean, we've got literally it's just a waste of time. Like, in the first game of the season, we played Portsmouth at home. He had a shot in the first half, and he let it in at the near post. and the guy behind me that shouted on the pitch, I'd have saved that. And I looked round and looked at him, and I thought, he's right. He'd have saved it. He's that bad. So yeah, and I think that's the sort of where I am with Melliot. I think that it's sort of so obvious, but I think we've got this thing that Farke seems to think he's better than he is. I mean, he was given the vice captain in the summer, but on the positive, I think against obviously at Harrogate at the weekend, Darlow did play. If that's an indication he's going to play or not, I think it could have happened either way. I don't think that. I look at that either way, to be honest. But I'm right. He's beyond frustrating. I think one of the most annoying things in football is probably not having a striker who can score and misses all your chances, and then probably not having a keeper who can save anything. I think they're the two most frustrating things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it does drive you insane. I'll be honest, I thought I'd seen earlier today some report come out that did say they were expecting Meslier to play against Wednesday next week. It seemed that Farke had said something, or that something was coming out as that being the case. But it's the one thing I can't get my head around, because Darlow is, he plays for Wales. He's been promoted from this division before with a really good record. He's a well thought of keeper who's outstanding. I can't understand why the reluctance to make this change or what it is. Obviously, I know Mellier's young, and obviously the club feel like they've invested a lot in him. Do you have any indication as to why it is that they're so reluctant to make this change, when it does feel like it's been obvious now for at least 18 months that it has been needed?
I don't know. I think there's a number of things, because I think there's some Leeds fans that are still sort of not on the train, and it's like, he's young, but he's been playing at the club for 5 years now. Like, at what point are you just young and rubbish? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not exactly that old. I'm only 23 myself. Can I play then? Because I might become a good player when I'm 30. Like, it's just nonsense. And I think that potentially plays into it. And yeah, I don't. And he's played in the Premier League potentially. I really don't get it, because it's not like he's good at anything. Like, his distribution's not even good. His positional sense is rubbish. He's bad at everything. There's nothing good about him. And I think actually last time I came on the show, I said we'd be top of the league. I don't think we were at the time. If we'd have got rid of Meslier, we are top now, obviously, sure, but I still think the same. I'm completely baffled by it, to be honest. I really am, and he frustrates me even when I see him in the lineup. It's got to that point now.
Well, I think also there's probably a psychological aspect to this, where the lad probably does need a fresh start, because he does have pedigree. I think he represented France at youth level. He's clearly had some talent, but I think once you've made a series of mistakes, there's a sort of spotlight shined on him, and I think he probably needs, to be taken out of the limelight and maybe just rebuild his career, because I'm sure he is talented, but it's that fear that's probably getting into his head at the moment. So I think he probably needs a fresh start. A slightly less heated bone of contention, Scott, is the striker position, because there's a real dilemma, I think, where you've got Matteo Joseph, who I think his all-round game is really strong. And I think that the Leeds United's goal record this season as a collective speaks to a centre-forward who brings the best out of the players around him. I think he's a direct runner. I think his link-up play is very strong, but he's just not a finisher. I think it's only 2 goals that he's scored all season. And if you're a number 9, it's not ideal. You'd want to be able to. And I'd probably look at this in the away games, where at home you're going to create a plethora of chances. It doesn't really matter if your number 9's missing them, because, one of the attacking midfielders or one of the fullbacks even, or midfielders, is going to get a goal and you'll score 3. Away from home, it's a little bit more limited, because you tend to have fewer chances. And that's where I do wonder, because Pirot's all-round game, he's a bit of an acquired taste, perhaps. Not everyone likes him at Farke.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. What's your take on the number 9 sort of role for Leeds? And is Daniel Farke right to kind of play down the need for additions this January?
There's two sort of different questions in that. But with the Pro versus Joseph thing, together they'd be the perfect player. Joseph does everything that Pro can't do, and Pro does everything that Joseph can't do. I think, which you sort of looked at when you talked about it, really. And you're absolutely right. For me, right now, it's got to a point with Joseph where I can accept a sort of young, scruffy finisher at times. It's that bad that it's almost like it's so detrimental to the team, because his decision making, not only with his shots are not only terrible in terms of his execution of shots, but he constantly picks the wrong option and constantly overhits passes. I mean, against Harrogate, there were a time when he had to play Dan James in, and just massively overhits it and ruins the chance. Whereas Pro's sort of precision probably wouldn't have led to that, really, and he would have probably got a much better chance. So yes, Pro's all-round game is beyond questionable. I mean, unless he's scoring, he's not really doing anything else. But I think it gets to a point where because he's so sort of scruffy as Joseph, I just don't think you can play him, because it's just going to cost you points. Like he constantly makes the wrong decision in every sort of attacking moment. And yeah, his pressing's really good, and yes, his hold-up play is really good. Yes, he runs the channels really well. All that is all true. But if someone is so scruffy in the final third, it ruins our attacks just constantly. So for me right now, I think we have to go with Pro. And Pro's not had an awful season from his accounts. He's got some like 10 goals already. So it's not dreadful, that is it, by any means. He's on for probably 20 goals, which is probably like a lot of clubs that come down go, well, we need a striker that's going to have 20 goals. We've got that, but he's a striker that does nothing else. So yeah, I think that's the situation with the Joseph and Pro thing. On the transfers, I think we've got a really strong squad anyway, and I think you probably look at other teams who like almost probably need investment that are around us potentially, and I'm not sure we're there right now. And I think we see other clubs sort of buying a lot of players, and we think that that's what we need to do, and it's not always the case, because I look at some of the players that the team are bringing in without sort of being too critical, and not a lot of them start for Leeds or sort of make our squad much better. Like some of them that bring in, like they're probably like would be our fifth choice winger. Well, do we really need a fifth choice winger? I don't think we do. And also we're in a position like the other teams are as well, where if you get promoted, do you really want to buy someone for 10 million and then be stuck with them in the Premier League? Well, you don't really. So it's that weird thing. Maybe you wait until the summer. So potentially some loans. I think a keeper's obvious, and they're cheap anyway, to be fair. Like what was Cooper, a few million in the summer, and Johansson at Stoke, I think he was $1 million as well, or 800,000. Like there's options out there cheap for keepers, or on loan potentially as well. Like Kyle Rush, I think, is probably an option there. But yeah, I think maybe a striker and a goalkeeper if anywhere. I saw Dennis was rumoured to a few Championship clubs today. Maybe someone like him on loan. I don't think he's the perfect answer, but I don't think we're going to get the perfect answer yet. And then obviously a new keeper.
It's so weird because for me, Leeds' team is genuinely insane. Like I look at the options, and so often I'm sat looking at this team and I think, Jesus Christ, I would kill for your fourth choice, never mind your first choice, just to come in at Bramall Lane. But I think that's one of the areas though that makes it so frustrating, and I imagine as a fan makes it even more frustrating, because everybody sits and talks like this. I'm in a group chat with quite a few Leeds fans, and every week somebody will say, oh, well, Leeds are obviously going to win about 4-0, and then they're going to run on and win the league. Then they're going to run on and win the league. And do you think that actually, we're talking about the recruitment United need to do, that Burnley need to do, that Sunderland are going to do? And do you think it is that pressure that maybe also impacts how Leeds, not just as a squad, are reacting, but as the fans are reacting? Because, we've reflected here, and obviously there's a lot of frustration about Melié's role. There's a lot of frustration about the dropped points and some of the things that are happening. But Leeds are still top of the league. There's still the odds-on favourites to get promoted and to win the league from this point. Do you think it is just that you feel like you're not getting the most out of this ridiculous squad of talent at the minute that makes it more frustrating to still be in the pack?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think, look, you naturally rate your own squad above probably other fans do. But as I said, even other fans rate our squad sort of above theirs at the moment. And I think we're in a position as Leeds fans where we're like, our squad's that good, we should be winning most weeks. And the fact that we're not doing, and it's just beyond frustrating. And I think even when we win, I think the problem is when we win as well, because we're so expected to win every game. Like we're playing at home, we're like 1-6 to win, 1-7. Like it's like nothing to win, which is just unheard of for a Championship team to be like that. The wins are not as like fun. Like we beat Oxford 4-0, and I think it was like Boxing Day or something. And my granny was on. She's like, "Why are you not so happy?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not. I'm just not. I sort of expect that in a weird way, and that's what we should be doing." And that obviously takes away from the wins. Now, some of the wins have been fantastic. Obviously, last minutes at Swansea, etc., were brilliant. The performance against Sheffield United was brilliant as well. But for the most part, I mean, yeah, it's not, even when you win, it's not that exciting because you're sort of so expecting to win. And I think that's what's happened to the crowd. And my brother's a season ticket holder, and he'll say, sits in the South Stand, and he'll say it's never been as quiet as this season, and we're going for automatic promotion. And I think that is the sort of beacon of the club right now, really, unfortunately.
Interesting. Scott. So yeah, Scott, I know you've you said you you're tied up until 6:15, so we've kind of overrun a little bit. Have you got time for one or two more questions, or have you got to shoot now?
Yeah, I can do. I'm meant to be going to gym and meet my mate. I'll just have to. I'll message him as soon as I finish.
Okay. Well, can you give us?
I've knocked it back about 20 times.
All right. Can you give us two questions? I'll keep it really short. Give me a 3-word answer. 3 best players for Leeds United this season.
3 best players. Oh, that's a good question. Dan James, probably, for the sort of what you expect from him and sort of what he gets out of his ability. He's got an innate ability to just get the best out of his sort of his skill set every week, which I don't think anyone else in the squad can do, really. Probably Tanaka in midfield has been an absolute revelation for us. And probably Pascal Struijk at the back as well. He's just so good. It's almost too easy for him, I think, this level, to be fair, which I think there's a few other centre-backs in the league. Esteve, probably at Burnley's another one like that. I think that probably our 3 best players, which I can't believe you'd be saying about Dan James. I think the other 3 wingers are much more sort of technically gifted, but as I said, he gets the best out of his ability week in, week out, which has been outstanding, something that a lot of them, especially in away games, haven't managed to do. Yeah,
certainly. I think maybe Manus Solomon, if it stayed fit, would be in that conversation.
Yeah, he's been really good in recent weeks. I think breaking down a low block, especially with that sort of next level of quality, I think he's
well, do you know what I really like as well, Scott, is how your fullbacks kind of underlap, and players like Solomon do a great job in terms of staying wide and providing that width.
Yeah, we've got Firpo back as well, so that should help with that. And Bogle, as you said, with the underlapping runs, it actually creates quite a lot of goal scoring opportunities for him, which is really nice. He's scored a few goals from underlapping runs.
Yeah, whilst creating space for the wide to deliver that quality. Yeah. Then what was I going to say? Do you think Leeds are going to get top 2?
Yeah, I think we probably will. But I think I don't think we're going to win the league by an X amount of points that I probably did at the start. Okay. But the problem is as well, if we're sort of neck and neck come the end of the season, I just can't. History tells me I can't put Leeds on, because I just know what I've lived it so many times. Like, especially against Chris Wilder at Sheffield United. I mean, it's just the worst case scenario.
Genuinely, I think every time we've been promoted, other than the last one, obviously, when you were already up, basically every time we get promoted to the Premier League, it's with Leeds finishing 3rd.
I think if we were in the window, I think Chris Wilder wouldn't do as well. I think he relies on sort of like wanting to be as close to Leeds as possible and like sort of battling it out. But fair play to him. The team's nowhere near what ours is, and it's
no Chris Basham this time. You'll be glad to know, Scott.
We've already played him at home as well, so we can't lose at home.
Scott, thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy your gym session later.
I won't do, really. I never enjoy a gym session, really. But you've got to do
you'll be glad you did it afterwards.
Right, see you later, lads.
Yeah, cheers, Scott. So, Oli, how do you feel, kind of just reflecting on those 3 contributions as a Sheffield United fan? Any of those that have made you more fearful of those opposing sides? Any of them that have made you more...
All of them. All of them. I'm terrified of all of them. It's funny because obviously, we talk about the league, and I just made the point then. I'd said, you come here and we're talking, and there's obviously a lot of frustration from Leeds fans, and you feel as though you've not quite achieved as much as you should have done while you sat top of the league. And now we're about to talk about United, and I'm about to do exactly the same thing, despite the fact that we've won more points than anybody else in the league. And I'm going to sit here and say, yeah, but they're better than us, aren't they? Yeah, but it's scary, isn't it, when you look at how good they are? And it is about that sort of context of, you look at your own club with that really critical eye and that real, like, you see only the failings. You look at every other team and you only see oh my God, Burnley are never going to concede a goal. Leeds have got 75 players that are all incredible and should be going.
You're looking in Europe,
never mind the Championship.
You're looking at Leeds' insanely high rate of creativity and envying it. Yeah. And Leeds are looking at Michael Cooper and envying that. It's like the grass is always greener.
The grass is always greener in football. But certainly, I think one of the things that coming into the window is that United did need recruitment. We needed a break, which we've got. We've had 2 weeks off since our last game that mattered. We'll get players back fit. We'll be back ready and we'll be able to sort of compete. And so that's been really positive. So I'm really positive for Norwich on Saturday. Vinny Souza coming back in, Tyrese Campbell maybe being fit again, Jezrak Saki being fit again. All of a sudden, we start to look like we've got a proper team to put out and a really a first team, effectively, that we've been missing.
Can I just say as well, Ollie, in Sheffield United's interest, Crystal Palace should absolutely go for Ben Doak. You know, sign him on the right wing. He'd be absolutely perfect for them. Yeah. What a brilliant signing that would be. And mean that they'd be all sorted for the right wing for the remainder of the season.
I think they should go in, they should spend loads of money on Ben Doak, make sure he's at the club. And then, to be honest, every other right winger, I'd almost let him go on a free. I'd be like, you know what? It's better for their career to just give him away. You know, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, getting those players back fit is going to be huge. But what worries me is I'm looking at Burnley. And Burnley have got a fantastic squad. They may be lacking a little bit at centre forward. And as I say, they remind me a lot of United. But Burnley's defensive options, you know, I look at their two that sit on the bench in John Egan and I think it's...
Scott Worrell.
Joe Worrell. Scott Worrell just left, Gab.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Joe Worrell and John Egan. And I think back to last summer, and United wanted both of them. We wanted them to be our centre-back pairing. You know, John Egan, the only reason he didn't get a new contract at Bromley is that he was injured at the time, and we weren't sure if he was going to get fit again. Joe Worrell we'd been trying to sign for 12, 18 months because we've wanted him to come and play. Then I sat on Burnley's bench, and I'm looking at that depth of squad. I'm looking at the players they've got, you know, up front, maybe they want to add a bit more, but then they're making £7 million bids for Morgan Whittaker. They're looking to bring in these players. I'm looking at Sunderland and they're saying, yes, we've bought in Lefay and also we're going to go out and if we can't get Brereton Diaz, we're going to get Tom Cannon. And they're looking at the gaps in their squad and filling them. And while the noise is there for United, the players haven't come through the door yet. And so we're still sat here 2 weeks into January and I'm saying, yeah, it's going to be a really important window for us. We're going to get lots of players in to fill the squad. But suddenly from getting 5 players in 5 weeks, we're going to get 5 players in 2 weeks now. And they've got to all fit in. They've got to get into the squad, get fit. And so, yeah, that's what worries me. I know that at our best, United are as good as any of these teams. You know, I accept that one-on-one, most of them would argue they should beat us. Leeds did beat us. Burnley did beat us. Sunderland beat us last time. So in a one-on-one game, they might say they can beat us. But when they then sit there and go, yeah, but we'll probably drop points to Derby or we've not had a good win away at whoever, United are consistent. We beat the teams we should beat, generally speaking. And it's only Burnley, Borough, Sunderland, Leeds that really look like beating us. So I'm really confident on that front. But we've got to get some players in the door. And that's why, listening to the others talk, I'm scared of them because of the recruitment they're doing, because of the squad depth they're talking about, that I just feel we're lacking.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because as much as we've possibly looked at whether you might have wanted to rotate and keep players fresh a little bit more, I think the 1-0 defeat to Cardiff City in the FA Cup kind of highlighted that there is that massive drop-off. You know, you go from Anel Ahmedhodzic to, with all respect to Jamal Baptiste, you know, he's somebody who's just come through the academy. Same on the left wing, Hamer to, you know, Ryan Brewster. It's players who are making, you know, big steps up. Another lad who's come through the academy in midfield. It's a big drop off, I think.
That's exactly it. You know, you look at that team that had to play against Cardiff, and you know, with all due respect to a lot of those players, it's the under-21s team. The team that played in that cup game was our under-21s team. But actually, they're also second choice in their position. If Anel Ahmedhodzic or Jack Robinson miss a game, Reece Norrington-Davis plays centre-half after them. So this famous left-back, who's always played left-back, he's now our backup centre-back. He's about 5'8", and he runs quite quick, and he's a very good footballer, but he's not a centre-half. You know, you look at those options.
If I think of Reece Norrington-Davis at his best in his career, it's probably as a wing-back rather than anything. It's like getting from one end of the pitch up to the other really quickly, that insane stamina. It's not, you know, being I like if it was a back four, I would almost have him more as a left-back than a centre-half. So that kind of shows you how limited your options are.
And on the right side, if we were looking at who's going to play centre-back on the right side if Anel doesn't play, well, Alfie Gilchrist has to move into the centre. Femi Sirike or Jamie Shackleton play right-back. Now, Femi Sirike had a brilliant season, but again, it's just showing that complete bare bonesness of the squad at the minute. And that's the worry. I think whenever the first team are out, everybody except Leeds, I think we can beat. When the first team isn't out, that's when it becomes a real battle. And that's when actually Chris Wilder has performed miracles, absolute miracles with this squad.
Yeah, he was almost in tears, wasn't he, after Watford, where he was so proud of his players who'd stepped up, players who'd been injured for a long time, like Tom Davies and managed 90 minutes, and players like Erne up top. It's like so impressive that players have been able to really stretch themselves, and that's kind of why you're in the mix.
At a level that they should never have been asked to be played at, a lot of these players. Andre Brooks, Ryan One, Femi Sirike, Siddy Peck. These are players who before this season had never been, they'd never played more than 10 games in a senior season. Some of them have never made more than one game a season. And suddenly we're asking them to play 10, 15 games in a row, 90 minutes every week at the top of the championship. It's incredible what these players have been able to do. But I was looking at this. I did a video on our channel on the Sheffield United Way the other day where I was looking at United's defence. And with Harry Souttar, United concede 0.3 goals per game. So we are matching Burnley. When Harry Souttar played for United, we match Burnley for the goals conceded, at the rate that we conceded those goals. When Harry Souttar doesn't play from United, we concede 1.3 goals per game. And we are looking like a mid-table to sort of Middlesbrough level playoff team where we're good, but we're conceding regularly. And obviously it's
almost like having a strong towering presence at the heart of the defence can help keep goals out.
I never would have expected it, Gab, would you? In fact, to be honest, Gab, I was saying this the other day. I wondered if you wanted a trial because you're the only man I know who can replace the height of Harry Souttar.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring some of his organisational qualities. I think that might be a little bit where the similarities end. Maybe physically slightly different propositions.
Well, obviously, it just shows that replacing Souttar is key to United's second half of the season. He's gone back to Leicester. He's out for the season. He's not going to play again. So who comes in and does that job? Because the drop-off from him to Anel and Robinson as a pair is huge. So we've got to find a way of getting him replaced and somebody else who can have that level of an impact.
Well, I don't know about you, Ollie, but this conversation has made me really excited for the rest of the season and for the weekend where you got Burnley against Sunderland on Friday. You've got Sheffield United against Norwich. And Norwich are another really good side. And then Leeds against Sheffield Wednesday on Sunday. I
don't think ever in my life, I don't think I've ever gone, come on, Wednesday. And yet, here I am.
And you're not, worrying times. That's where it's got to. Ollie, thanks so much for joining us as co-host this evening. Thanks. We really appreciate your time. Thanks to all our guests tonight. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate Championship podcast. We'll see you again next week.